Ferrari humiliation in qualifying for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix as the Scuderia suffer a double Q2 exit on home soil as Oscar Piastri pips Max Verstappen to pole position. Elsewhere, Yuki Tsunoda suffered one of the biggest crashes in recent seasons, whilst Franco Colapinto had a return to F1 to forget. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by lead editor Ian Parks. Now, Ian, there's been rumours flying around that this could be the last time F1 goes to Imola. If that is the case, I mean, it gave us a qualifying to remember. Over 90 minutes it lasted, an absolute thriller. And we've got to start with what happened in the opening few minutes for Yuki Tsunoda. A huge barrel roll crash, which, I mean, understandably, shook up people watching on.
Just to give you a heads up on your very first line, Nick, I would be extremely surprised if the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix is back on the circuit next year. Certainly there's been no indications at all that a new contract has been signed and it can pave the way for a continued place on the grid. There's already been made mention as well about two Italian Grand Prix, despite the fact that we could have two Spanish Grand Prix next year with Barcelona and Madrid, of course. But obviously now moving on, yes, this is a fabulous old school circuit. It punishes the smallest of mistakes. And that's exactly what we have seen today with both Yuki Tsunoda and Franco Colapinto, especially, both involved in huge crashes. Yuki's considerable in that Red Bull, of course, barrel rolling over a barrier. And yes, that was quite a devastating crash. I can imagine we're going to see a pit lane start for you. That is a huge repair job on the hands of those Red Bull mechanics. It wouldn't be surprising at all if both sets of mechanics on either side of the garage, Max's team, going to lend a hand to help Yuki's team get that car ready for tomorrow, because that is a massive undertaking. And as for Franco Colapinto, as you said, what an F1 turn to forget so far. It's not been on the pace, but that was perhaps to be expected.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, post-Friday practice in our update then, he's not been in an F1 car bar a TPC drive Zandvoort really recently after he was confirmed that he was replacing Jack Doohan. So he's not been in a Formula One car, good Formula One car, since the end of last season when he drove for Williams. So this has been a real baptism of fire, and so far he's not come through it. As I mentioned to you as well in the post-Friday update, Flavio Briatore said to Franco, 3 things I want you to do now you've taken over this seat from Jack Doohan: drive fast, score points, don't crash. Oh dear, he's already immediately failed on the third one of those. So he now has a lot of work to do to try and convince Flavio that going forward, he is the long-term driver for that teammate seat alongside Pierre Gasly.
And of course, Franco's crash actually came quite literally in the dying seconds of Q1. Cough up, Ian, hope you're right, mate.
Yeah,
but Franco's incident led to massive confusion, it seemed, and a lengthy delay to Q2 because there was a bit of a decision. Was Gabriel Bortoleto going to progress? Was Oliver Bearman going to progress? In the end, it was Bortoleto, not Bearman, by the finest of margins, but an odd delay, it's got to be said.
Huge frustration on behalf of Ollie Bearman, it has to be said. He was particularly critical of the FIA in the written media drivers' pen that followed qualifying, or certainly followed his qualifying session as well, of course, because the drivers come through after each block has gone out, exited Q1 or Q2, and then obviously Q3. So Ollie Bearman in the pen quite early, not where he expected to be. He was absolutely convinced that when the red flag light showed on his steering wheel dash, he had crossed the line and a time had been set. However, we seem to have this almost like a VAR review in football where race control took quite a long time to determine whether this red light had appeared, what time the checkered flag came out, where Ollie Bearman was in the front nose of his car, the front of his car was in relation to that line at that particular point when the red light was signaled, when the checkered flag came out. As I say, Ollie absolutely convinced that he had crossed the line. And as you say, we saw all this lengthy delay. You can imagine that Haas were having discussions. The team manager there was having discussions with the FIA, trying to ascertain, trying to get their driver through. all to no good, unfortunately, for Ollie Behrman. And you can appreciate the abject disappointment that he expressed in the driver's pen post-qualifying. But as it stands, he actually does move up a place because thanks to Franco Colapinto, uh, as we said, a day to forget, he has incurred a one-place grid penalty because he took to the pit lane far too early. We saw this penalty earlier in the season. I think it was in Bahrain, Nick, you might remember well, when George Russell and I think Kimi Antonelli have both gone into the pit lane.
I
When it
believe
was
it
only,
was, yeah.
yeah, when it was only an estimated start time. So that meant there was no official start time. And that is the cue when the official start time comes up for drivers then to make their way into the pit lane to prepare for the restart of qualifying if necessary. Unfortunately, Franco released too early. There was only an estimated warning at that particular stage. So to add to his woes, he incurs that one place grid penalty. I just wanted to go back to
Go for it.
I just wanted to add it because I thought it might be quite interesting for our viewers and listeners to get a little bit of a handle on the words of both Yuki Tsunoda and Franco Colapinto in the pen afterwards. Yuki, hugely remorseful, expressed shame. Seriously, folks, he said shame. He felt shameful for the crash that had occurred. He said he tried to be a hero, that he was pushing it too much, too soon, and that's exactly what cost him. Now, I thought they were really good, honest words from Yuki Tsunoda. Franco Colapinto, on the other hand, I was expecting so much more for him. Yeah, okay, he's getting back up to speed in the car. I appreciate that. But this is a guy that had 3 crashes during his 9 Grand Prix with Williams. 2 of those particularly heavy in both Brazil and Las Vegas. So this is the 3rd big crash in Franco's past 5 Grand Prix that he has had now. However, in stark contrast to Yuki's comments, Franco was kind of brushing it off a little bit. He said, yeah, it looks bad, but actually it isn't bad. Got to think, actually, well, honestly, Franco, it does look bad. Flavio Briatore has told you, do not crash. And on your first serious session in the car, you've gone and crashed. And not only have we got this old school circuit for him to go around tomorrow, probably 60-odd laps, he's got the Monaco Grand Prix to get through as well, where, as we know, with those walls and barriers so tight, and where you have to thread that car almost like through the eye of a needle, who's to say he won't have another crash there as well? Fingers crossed he doesn't. Quite obviously, we don't want to see that, but there's already now going to be an awful lot of pressure and expectation on Franco Colapinto's shoulders going not into the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix on Sunday, but also now into next weekend's Monaco Grand Prix.
And of course, we have seen from Franco, in particular last season, when he first got in that Williams, that actually, to be fair, when he's on it, he is really, really quick. So hopefully we see more of that rather than these crashes. But of course, it was also so bad for Ferrari. Maybe that's a bit of an understatement. Ferrari humiliation was, of course, the words I used. Charles Leclerc 11th, Lewis Hamilton 12th. It was also an Italian nightmare in general because Kimi Antonelli was also out in Q2. He's 13th. But I mean, the Ferrari boys it goes from worse to even worse to even much worse, if that even makes sense, because this is the weekend. We've spoke about it in the F1 updates in the podcast ahead of this weekend, how big a weekend it was for Ferrari to try and start turning things around. And I mean, Lewis in particular said he was gutted, devastated, actually thought the car felt pretty good. Yet when he looked at the lap times, the pace difference, pretty extraordinary.
As you were saying, it home humiliation, not just for the Ferrari boys, but also for Mercedes, Kimi Antonelli. I'll come on to him in a moment, but let's deal with Ferrari, as you say, 11th and 12th on that grid. That is not what was expected, anticipated, so much hope and expectation. However, there was a warning. We knew that this circuit, low downforce as it is, would not be good for this current Ferrari. It operates better in medium to high downforce conditions. So there was always going to be this undercurrent that potentially Ferrari would struggle. However, I don't think anybody was anticipating the level to which Ferrari would struggle. Both Williams ahead, both Aston Martins ahead, and I know we're going to come on to those guys in a second. Isaac Hadjar ahead in the Racing Bulls. What an outstanding season he's having so far after what happened in a season opening incident in Australia, of course. But Ferrari, as you mentioned, Lewis Hamilton in particular, devastated, gutted, fully expecting going into qualifying that he had a good car beneath him. He was totally confident that he was going to make Q3, be in that top 10. And lo and behold, you can imagine here all the Ferrari fans walking away thinking, wow, this season is now nearly over for us unless Ferrari pulls something extraordinary out the bag over these coming races. Because as I put it to Lewis in the pen afterwards, I said, the clock is ticking because it's going to come to a point very soon where the team will want to shut down the 25 program and focus solely on the 26 program. Lewis is quite naturally aware of that fact, but he actually then expanded to a certain extent. And it's something that I've mentioned on quite a few occasions now. I've always said this season would be a platform year for Lewis, building into 26 to help him get used to the team, its processes, its systems, the people, quite obviously, as to how they work, and him trying to form that hand in glove relationship with those people as he had with Mercedes, bearing in mind he was there for quite a considerable period of time, of course. So for Lewis, yes, the clock is ticking. 26 for Ferrari is coming a lot quicker than they would have hoped, quite naturally. And for, as I say, it really is a case now of trying to do what they can in a very short period of time, because they are going to want to shut down 25 and focus on 26 if they cannot get to grips with this car in short order. And then just quickly adding, because I was going to mention it, of course, Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah.
As he put it in the pen, complete lack of confidence with the Mercedes. George Russell again pulling out really good lap for Mercedes, third on the grid as we've seen, but for Kimi, just no confidence. And for now it's down to him. He's got to try and go away, work out with his team where it didn't quite go right, what he can now do to try and pull a result out of the bag on Sunday, because he knows that there was so much hype and hope placed on his shoulders as well. Bearing in mind, as I've mentioned a couple of times now, this is his home circuit. He was born just in the city of Bologna, just 30 minutes away from Imola. So this is so special and so significant for him that he really wants to do a good job now on Sunday.
And of course, at the sharp end, ended up being a fight for pole between Oscar and Max Verstappen. Lando Norris not really at the pole position races. He was 3/10 adrift of his teammate, and once again, really self-critical, blaming himself for saying there was nothing wrong with the car. He just can't keep making these mistakes in a final qualifying lap. His rivals get faster, he gets slower. It's again the complete contrast to Oscar, who cool, calm and collected, another pole position, but with a pretty quick, it's got to say today, Max Verstappen alongside him.
Yes, once again, Max pulling out an extraordinary qualifying lap when you consider, once again, he appeared to be struggling on Friday. We heard his comments over the radio, various aspects of that RB21 he wasn't happy with. But once again, he and the team, as we've seen on numerous occasions now already so far this season, from Friday to Saturday, really pulling it out of the bag and giving him a car at least with which he could fight with. And as we saw, he came so close once again to landing it on pole position, just 0.034 seconds away from Oscar Piastri. Oscar, 3/10 clear of Lando. That gives you some idea as to the gap between these two at the minute. And while Oscar's star is rising, we're seeing it again with Lando. Once he gets into the seemingly mental dip, he finds it very difficult to try and pull himself out of it. We know it's the way Lando is. This is his character. This is his personality. This is the way he deals with things. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's got no qualms whatsoever about doing so and expressing his opinion about getting everything out there. But for him as well, unless he starts turning things around, then all too soon, McLaren are going to start focusing its attention on Oscar Piastri rather than him, should there any kind of title battle develop with the likes of Max Verstappen, for argument's sake, because let's face it, Max is not out the running, far from it, at this particular stage of the season.
And just to very quickly go through the top 10 provisionally on the grid, who knows what could happen overnight. Oscar Piastri is on pole position with Max Verstappen joining him on the front row. George Russell qualified in third, ahead of Norris in fourth. Fernando Alonso, the top Spaniard, in fifth, who we'll briefly mention in a second, with Carlos Sainz alongside him in sixth. Alex Albon seventh, Lance Stroll eighth, Isaac Hadjar in ninth, and Pierre Gasly P10. So Ian, as you mentioned, both Aston Martins, both Williams in the top 10. Two teams who could not be more different. Williams with zero upgrades, full focus on 2026. Aston Martin, on the other hand, with a huge package this weekend, the biggest in the paddock by some margin. It's a remarkable story in the way it's one's got everything, one's got nothing.
I mean, it's a sample of one. You know, it's a particular circuit, it is Imola. So let's give it the Monaco Grand Prix, the street circuit there, and then the more higher downforce circuit of Barcelona, of course, just to see where Aston Martin is in that pecking order in particular. But as a fillip, as a tonic, boy, did that team need this result today, because they have been languishing towards the back of that grid, really struggling to get any kind of performance out of that car. Now, speaking to Andy Cowell on Thursday morning in his mini press conference that he started to conduct now on Media Day on Thursday, there was the kind of looking at it that a lot was riding on this. They knew that with this package, it had to come good. Otherwise, they too would then perhaps start to focus a lot earlier than they would have wanted to have hoped coming into the season on 2026. At least now, from what we've seen around this particular circuit anyway, it's that upgrade package, which, as you say, is the biggest of any of the teams that has been brought here for this weekend. It has delivered. That's the word I was looking for. It has conjured the results that they were really, really hoping for. So at least Aston Martin has a platform on which it can now develop. It's now going to want to build on this, of course. It's going to want a double points finish for both Fernando and Lance. And as we are all well aware, after 6 Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso has not scored a point so far this season. That is something he is going to want to correct. There's got Carlos Sainz, his fellow Spaniard, alongside him. Just 1,000th of a second separated those guys. I can imagine that many people, if you were going to put a wager down coming into this week and said, who will be the leading Spaniard on the grid coming out of qualifying, you would have wagered Carlos Sainz. So, but that just goes to show the kind of job that Fernando Alonso has done, kind of job that Aston Martin has done with those upgrades. So a lot you would hope now to come from Aston Martin. That's to say, they will really want to build on this with a solid double points finish on Sunday.
For certain. Ian, amazing stuff as always. Of course, for those who are watching this F1 update, please do let us know your thoughts on qualifying in the comment section below, with any predictions you have for the race. If you could also smash that like button and subscribe to the channel, that would be absolutely amazing. And please do join Ian and myself after Sunday's race, which I think is going to be a good one. See you later.
Should be, hopefully, be a classic. Take care, folks.